Hello, 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 BioTrust Nation. Coach Tim here today, and I want to go over a reader question with you that I think would apply to quite a few of you, and maybe just get some conversation started. But this is on menopause and weight gain or weight loss, however you want to look at it. So this question comes from Cindy, and Cindy says, now that I'm 52 years old, I'm beginning to adjust to menopause. I've heard so many stories from friends who have basically given up on their health and weight loss goals since they're past a quote-unquote certain age. Despite being consistent with my nutrition and exercise routine, I too have felt like I've been slowing down a bit and gaining weight, and it's especially noticeable around my midsection. Is this an inevitable effect of menopause? Is there anything I can do about it to prevent it, or better yet, reverse the weight gain? Or do I just need to learn to deal with yet another aspect of this new normal? I'd love to reclaim my former waistline. Please tell me it's possible. Well, Cindy, I am going to tell you that it's possible, and I think that we'll just kind of traverse some things here as we dig into it. So, you're absolutely right. Menopause and weight gain are highly associated in the research. For instance, one study showed that over the course of 3 years, menopausal women gained about 5 pounds, and over the course of an 8-year period, they gained 12 pounds on average. Perhaps more important than weight gain is menopause is associated with a increase in belly fat or visceral fat, which has tremendous implications for a variety of reasons, most notably that increased belly fat increases the risk for cardiovascular disease, type 2 diabetes, osteoporosis, sleep apnea, mood disorders, just quite a few things that are associated with that increased belly fat. So we're going to hone in on that, especially considering that menopause is obviously a change in reproductive hormones in women, most noted by a drop in estrogen. And so most people assign this weight gain to these changes in hormones, when in fact the research shows us pretty clearly that weight gain itself is an age-related consequence, not a menopause-related consequence. I'm going to get into that in a bit more in just a second. However, the increase that we see in visceral fat or belly fat does seem to be a hormone-related consequence or a menopause-related consequence. The reason I think it's important to point that out is because the changes in weight gain seem to be, like I said, assigned to they seem to be age-related changes, which can be related back to a decrease in metabolic rate, a decrease in muscle mass. For instance, the biggest behavioral change that we see in menopausal women is a decrease in physical activity, which would be directly related to both of those things. So kind of with that backdrop set, we can start to dig into some of the strategies on how to lose weight during menopause and after menopause. For starters, I do think it's important that expectations and goals are set appropriately. For instance, it is a bit of an uphill battle. I'm not going to lie about that. So with that in mind, maybe it's not the time to consider being your leanest weight ever or have your leanest body composition ever. But I think just setting realistic expectations, focusing on a reasonable amount of weight loss or even weight maintenance, setting goals for health and how you feel, things like that might be more realistic than saying reclaiming waistline of 18 years old, but reclaiming your waistline of when you're 40, maybe that's realistic. So the next step would be to get moving. When we look, like I said, when we look at these studies, the researchers show pretty clearly that the decreases in physical activity are tied to the weight gain as opposed to the menopause itself. So making sure that you're getting in 6,000 to 10,000 steps a day, walking 10 to 15 miles, just this being more regular with your physical activity overall. The next step would be strength training. So like we talked about, a decrease in metabolic rate, a decrease in muscle mass seem to be tied to this weight gain that we're typically seeing with menopause and aging. Well, resistance training is going to be your number one tool to maintain and build muscle mass as you get older. So make sure that you're lifting weights 3 times a week, preferably full body types of exercise. Don't have to do super heavy weights or anything like that. research now shows that lifting light weights, at least lifting light weights to a point of fatigue, making sure that you're working hard, can help make sure that you're building that muscle mass and maintaining it over time. The next thing would be your diet, making sure that your diet is in check. And along those lines, obviously, if weight loss or fat loss is the goal, then a calorie-controlled diet is key. And diet and exercise seem to work better for weight maintenance and weight loss overall in the long term. So basically, the best diet is going to be the one that works for you, the one that you can stick to. The Mediterranean style diet certainly sticks out as a leader for most people, just with its focus on whole foods, fruits and vegetables, whole grains, nuts, seeds, legumes, protein sources like fish, some dairy, some eggs. That's certainly an option. The ketogenic diet, there's some interesting research in postmenopausal women with the ketogenic diet, weight loss and appetite. So that's definitely a hot trend right now, and perhaps it's worth looking into for someone who's having difficulty with just a standard diet or managing appetite, things like that. In addition to that, I think protein intake becomes a linchpin as well. So in addition to resistance training, protein is going to be the second most important variable, or arguably, I don't even know if you could say second most important. It's right up there with resistance training as the most important variable to help maintain that muscle mass as we get older. So making sure that you're taking in an optimal amount of protein, which, if just generally speaking, probably somewhere around 0.7 grams per pound of body weight per day. So making sure that you're getting a portion or two of protein at each feeding is going to be really important, not only for the muscle mass, but also to help make sure that you keep your appetite in check, keep your appetite and cravings in check. So it's going to have a substantial impact on overall food choices, caloric intake as well. In addition to watching what you eat, is also important to watch how you eat. So what I mean by that is, certainly with fluctuations in hormones, we start to see some emotional eating. Just pay attention to any triggers, environmental, foods, things like that may cause you to overeat, make poor food choices, and of course always making sure that you have healthy foods around. In addition to how you eat, also paying attention to when you eat. So generally speaking, for weight loss, the idea is that we need to have a daily caloric deficit in order to achieve substantial weight loss or fat loss over time. And while it is true that we need to be fairly consistent with our energy deficit, the recent research is showing pretty clearly that intermittent fasting is quite an effective strategy to use for weight loss, and equally as effective, if not more effective in certain cases, than daily caloric restriction. And there may be additional benefits associated with that. So under the umbrella of intermittent fasting, you have alternate day fasting, where you basically have anywhere from 1 to 3 days a week where you're either not eating or eating a very small amount, say 500 calories, and then on the days that you're eating, you basically don't have any restriction, just eat obviously healthy foods to your satisfaction. We also have time-restricted feeding, which involves a shorter feeding window, so maybe eating for 6 to 8 hours, or some people up to 12 hours a day, just keeping your feeding window relatively small. There's some interesting research in postmenopausal mice, yes, there is such thing, where this time-restricted feeding has been shown to be effective for weight loss and overall health. There's also the fast-mimicking diet, which we've talked about here on the blog before too, and I think we'll see more and more research in that capacity. Fast-mimicking diet is also going to have some potentially substantial healthy aging or anti-aging benefits in addition to that. Speaking of when you eat, it's also important to talk about sleep. I understand that sleep can be harder and harder to come by, but it's going to be tremendously important for things like your stress management, your resilience, also how your appetite can be affected by sleep, as well as how you handle the food that you eat. So glycemic control or blood sugar regulation can be impacted by sleep. It's also obviously going to impact your mood and so many other variables, energy levels. So making sure that you're getting plenty of restorative sleep, If you look in the article, there's a link to another article that I wrote with a ton of different ideas on stress management, sleep hygiene, and circadian rhythms, and why those are all important in getting appropriate sleep. Speaking of stress management, yoga, that's another thing that I think can be highly beneficial during and after menopause for stress management, but also for, studies have shown that yoga in postmenopausal women can reduce waist circumference, reduce body weight, and improve cardiometabolic health. So there's a lot of things there to consider with yoga. Finally, I think, I'm not an endocrinologist, nor do I play one here on the video, but I do think it's important to talk to your healthcare provider about hormone replacement therapy. Contrary to popular belief, it does not seem to increase body weight. In fact, the opposite has been shown, where hormone replacement therapy can actually decrease belly fat. So definitely something to look into if you haven't already. So Cindy, I hope that you and others following along found this information helpful. I'd love to hear your feedback and questions that you have, things that have worked for you, things that haven't worked, and just let us know how we can help. Certainly having social support and accountability can be tremendous assets in this fight as well. So keep up the great work and let us know how we can help you out. Thanks.